Welcome, and thank you so much for joining today's Elevate and Empower event on emotional intelligence, specifically self-awareness. My name is Elizabeth Pravat, and I will be your technical producer for today's event. So if you run into any issues with accessing the meeting or anything I can help you with along the way, please feel free to reach out to me via IM. Now, I want to point out to you that this spotlight on emotional intelligence is part of a series. So we did have a overview of all elements of emotional intelligence last month, and that recording can be found on our SharePoint, which I will put that link in the chat. But this is the first part of a deep dive when it comes to the elements of emotional intelligence. So I'm very excited for you to learn more about self-awareness, but then also be on the lookout for future Elevate and Empower events for the remaining three items associated with emotional intelligence. So before we get started with our presenter today, I would like to cover a few housekeeping items. Today's event is being recorded, and your microphone and cameras have been muted by default, but you are encouraged to type comments and questions into the chat. You can also use the reactions feature, and we will get any questions answered that you pose into that chat. I also want to point out that live captioning has been enabled in Teams. If you'd like to access this, you can click the More Actions button, which is the three dots at the top of the screen. Then click Language and Speech, turn on live captions, select English, and click Confirm. Finally, your feedback is very important to us. At the conclusion of today's event, I will send a link to a brief survey and would really love to hear what you thought about today's event so we can continue to improve. So at this time, I would like to introduce our speaker, Mr. Jerry Britt. Mr. Britt is a program specialist with the Training, Administration, and Consulting Division of the Office of Human Capital Services. Mr. Britt, we are honored that you're here today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Can I get a thumbs up if everybody can hear me and also if you can see my slides? All right, thank you so much. So in our fast-paced and often stressful work environments, understanding how we respond emotionally is critical in being effective both individually and as a team. Emotional intelligence, or EQ or EI, is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our emotions as well as the emotions of others. Here's what we're going to cover today. We'll explore what self awareness means within the broader concept of emotional intelligence. We'll look at how our emotions influence our behavior and decisions. We'll learn some practical tools to increase our personal self awareness. So let's begin with the definition. Daniel Goldman, a leader in this field, defines emotional intelligence as the capacity to recognize our own feelings and those of others, to motivate ourselves, and to manage emotions well. EQ has 5 components: self awareness, self regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. Today, we're going to zoom in on the first and most foundational, self awareness. And the reason why it's most foundational is because if I don't know myself, I can't regulate my emotions. If I don't understand what motivates myself, then I sort of have to be aware of that. Then how can I motivate myself? If I've never really understood sadness or somebody else's joy, like how can I have empathy if I haven't really defined that within myself? And again, social skills, when you look at a social setting, we have to understand how we are feeling in that setting in order to make sure we're putting forth our best version of ourselves. So when we go back to this, all of these are the foundation is self-awareness for all of these. Self-awareness involves a deep understanding of yourself. It empowers you to make better decisions, enhance relationships, and achieve personal and professional fulfillment. Self-awareness is a key pillar of emotional intelligence. It means looking inwards to understand who you truly are. We recognize our strengths and our weaknesses through through self awareness. Recognizing your strengths allows you to play to your advantage. For instance, if you're a great communicator, you can volunteer to lead a meeting. Or knowing your weakness, like poor time management, helps you take steps to improve. And for me personally, I know my strengths and weaknesses. I enjoy communicating. I'm great with interpersonal relationships. However, though, when it comes down to time management, I'm not as good as as I would like to be. So knowing that about myself, I take steps to sort of mitigate that. I put in my calendar of each task that I have to take care of that day, and I put in my calendar so I remember to take care of it. And what also uh, you know gets with my poor management skills is that I take on more than sometimes I'm capable of doing. So therefore, I have to think through that sometimes of like, is this something that I have time to take on? Emotion and understanding your emotions, being aware of your emotions means recognizing what you're feeling and why. For example, knowing that you feel anxious before a presentation can help you take calming measures. Realizing the impact of your emotions. This is also self awareness. Your emotions affect not just you, but also those around you. If you're stressed, if you're upset, it could negatively impact the team around you. Controversially, a positive attitude can motivate others. Self-reflection is another aspect of self-awareness, and it's something that we can use every day. Regularly reflect on your thoughts and behaviors through practices like journaling, which we're going to go over today. And you can also, through that journaling, it'll provide insights into how you're feeling, and it will show areas of where you can grow and improve. In summary, self awareness helps you understand your inner self, enabling you to make better choices, build stronger relationships, both personally and professionally. So this is the first step for our journaling for the day. So if you have a document, a Word document that you could pull up, or a piece of paper at your desk, pull it out. So we're gonna do this. We're gonna have a couple of these areas where we're gonna start journaling and start learning about ourselves. Take a moment to think back on this past week. Can you recall a moment when you had a strong emotional reaction? Ask yourself, what was the emotion? What triggered it? Did you respond or did you react? This exercise will help us to start to notice the difference between reacting instinctively versus responding thoughtfully. So if you will, please take about 3 minutes to walk through and write down what was the emotion, what triggered it, and how did you respond? So as you start to wrap up your thoughts, if you already have finished, please feel free to drop what emotion you were feeling if you feel like if you feel like sharing into the chat. What this does is this helps us sort of understand other emotions that we may not be thinking about in our own self, or expands our vocabulary so we can say, oh, what is I haven't seen that emotion before. I like that, which is was said there, anger, others not doing their job correctly, respond to fix the issue. I like that response. And emotion, sad. That's a good response as well. Exhausted, exhausted, like that's another one. Um, Frustration, that's another one. Thank you all for sharing. And here's probably my favorite exercise about self-awareness, emotional mapping exercise. So in this, I want you to think about your day. Reflect on a typical work day. Identify three key moments from your day when you experience strong emotions, both positive and negative. Map your emotions. Use the table in the handout to map out these emotions. Include the emotion, the trigger, and whether you responded thoughtfully or reacted instinctively. So let's spend the next 3 minutes reflecting and filling out your own emotional mapping. Think of what you notice. Are there patterns? Are there certain triggers reoccurring? So let's take the next couple minutes and let's think about that, and we'll come right back. One of the things that I found for this emotional mapping exercise, one of the things it did for me is I realized that I like to have my meetings in the morning. I do not like to work on hard problems in the afternoon. I think mostly that's because in the afternoons I'm already thinking about dinner. In the morning I've already had breakfast. I'm already had my coffee, so I'm ready to go out and conquer whatever task is handed to me. So my insight from this was I need to make sure I map a lot of my meetings or schedule a lot of my meetings in the morning, which helped me to actually better problem solve than scheduling a meeting 3:30 in the afternoon where my brain is already thinking about dinner. So if you have an insight that you gain from this exercise, please feel free to share it in the chat. That is true. I agree. It is very hard to rein in those instinctive responses. I can also that's a very good comment too as well, Gene, is insecurity triggered feeling betrayed and you responded thoughtfully. That's great. Inspired. I like that. Inspired by feeling seen. Thank you all for sharing. Hopefully this exercise will help you and you could do this with your week too as well. I've done it with Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's like, just put my how am I feeling each time or each day and therefore it sort of helps you figure out what days might be the best time to, like I said, schedule a meeting. If I'm feeling joyful on a Wednesday, then every Wednesday, maybe that's a good time to schedule a meeting. Goleman defines self awareness as having a deep understanding of one's emotions, strengths, weaknesses, needs, and drives. The three key traits are emotional insight, the ability to recognize your own feelings, accurate self assessment, knowing your strengths and limits, self confidence, a strong sense of your self worth. So take a few seconds to think, which of these do I feel most confident in? Which one might I want to improve in? I can tell you for me personally, I'm very confident in an accurate self-assessment of myself. I know my strengths and weakness very well, but the area I could probably improve some, that would probably be emotional insight, recognizing my own feelings. I think sometimes to be honest, I type what I'm feeling into Google just to see if there's a better word that I can use to understand what exactly I'm feeling. And I think that's one of the areas where I can improve in. So hopefully you can think about one of the areas that you can improve in, one of the areas of this that you are very confident and strong in. So why does self-awareness matter? Self-awareness is what allows us to understand our impacts on others, make better decisions, and stay grounded under stress. It contributes to authenticity, emotional balance, better teamwork. Leaders with high self awareness are more effective because they understand how their emotions influence their actions and leadership style. I could tell you that when I was in the military and I was leading people, I could tell you directly my emotions and my persona directly impacted those around me. If I was joyous, if I was happy, those around me were also joyous and happy. If I was sad, sometimes the other people around me were sad. So being self-aware of that, and sometimes I would just vocalize it like, today I'm not having a good day. And people around me, okay, well, great. I'll give you some grace today. Or other times, today I'm having an excellent day. And then everybody wants to celebrate with you. So just remember how your self-awareness affects those around you. So as we think through, and I saw some instinctive responses in there, and as we think through how to manage those instinctive responses, is there some science behind all of this? You may have heard of the term amygdala hijack. That's when the emotional part of your brain takes over before the thinking part can react. The good news is with mindfulness, we can strengthen the prefrontal cortex, which helps regulate those emotional impulses. Neuroplasty shows us that we can rewire our brains for better self-awareness through consistent practices. So as we think through this, we need to make sure we have a pause. And if you were in the foundations of emotional intelligence, one of the things I talked about is how I got past this hijack, how I got past that fight or flight. And to be honest, I use three. I think through my thought before I provide it, and I think through it 3 times. The first time, that's normally my instinct. That's my knee-jerk reaction. I get rid of that thought immediately. My second thought is probably a thought that's not going to be good neither. It's a thought probably to point a finger back at somebody else, but I get rid of that thought too. My third thought is one I typically go with. That's the one that is more thoughtful. It's the one that I've sort of refined in my head, and that's the one that I want to provide to people. That's how I got away from this hijack and how I got away from the fight or flight or that instinctive response. I was able to sit down and think through that, and the more you do that process, the quicker that it will come. So I encourage you to find your way to mindfully get through that, or to mindfully rewire your brain so you don't respond instinctively and maybe say something that you don't want to say to somebody or you may regret later on. Now let's dive into a critical aspect of emotional intelligence: internal and external self-awareness. Tasha Eurich, in her book Insight, found that only 10 to 15% of people are truly self aware, which means there's a significant opportunity for growth in this area for most of us. One of the things that I'll point out here too is self awareness has become more and more popular, especially as we look around and we try to figure out how we're managing ourselves and how we're affecting the team. One of the specific areas that it's become popular in is in sports too as well. A lot of the sports players start becoming self-aware of their actions when they're on the court, and they start thinking through their reactions and their response, and they start mindfully thinking through that. And this is something that has helped a lot of those athletes perform at their top level. Now when we bring it back to us, this is something we can do both internal and externally, think through what we are doing. Therefore, we can think through and think about how we're going to influence the team, how we're going to help the team out, how we're going to help ourselves out. So it's just part of just reflecting and thinking through. Both internal and external self-awareness are critical for a holistic approach to emotional intelligence. Internal self-awareness involves understanding your own emotions, values, and how they impact your behavior and decision making. External self-awareness is about understanding how others perceive us and interpreting their reactions to your actions and your behavior. So let's break down these concepts further. Internal self-awareness. This is about being in tune with your internal state. For example, understanding that before you give a presentation, you're feeling anxious, and you can recognize how that anxiety affects you. For example, before I gave this presentation, I was feeling anxious. So I recognized immediately I'm feeling anxious. My heart was racing. My hands were starting to become sweaty. My brain started to race with that. So I recognized that, and I was like, I need to take. I recognized that myself. I need to take a step to to calm that down, to bring that anxiety down. So I just did a breathing exercise where I closed my eyes, took a couple deep breaths, slowed down my heart rate, and thought through what I was going to talk about today. That right there is a perfect example of internal self awareness. External self awareness. This involves seeing yourself from the outside. It's about being aware of how others perceive your actions. For instance, realizing that your peers see you as a leader who is calm under pressure. Why is this important? Internal self awareness leads to better decision making, greater personal fulfillment, and emotional regulation. Knowing your own emotional state helps you navigate your reactions more effectively. External self awareness improves relationships, enhances communication, and builds social harmony. Understanding how others perceive you can help adjust your approach to better align with team dynamics and expectations. So we come to another journaling exercise. I'll guide you through this short exercise. So think of a recent situation where you felt a strong emotion. What was it? What prompted it? How did that emotion influence your actions or decisions in the situation? Recall a recent interaction with a colleague or a friend. How did they perceive your behavior during that interaction? Did you receive any feedback, direct or indirect, that can help you understand how others see you? So before we go into this, I want to just give you a short personal reflection on my own. I noticed that during tense project deadlines, I feel anxious, which often leads me to short-tempered or be short-tempered in meetings. While my internal self-awareness helped me recognize my anxiety, the lift sessions conducted with my colleagues made me aware of how my behavior was perceived. This dual awareness allowed me to improve my self management and my interactions with my team. I had to recognize that what I was feeling internally and match that with the feedback provided by my team members during my lift sessions. So, what I would like for y'all to do during this time is take about 3 minutes, and I want you to write down some of your responses to both your internal and external self awareness, and then we'll come right back. As you're wrapping up your thoughts, feel free to share a single word or a short sentence about what surprised you when you're learning about your internal and external self awareness. All right, if somebody else is still writing, feel free to write. Just remember, developing both internal and external self awareness is a foundational process to emotional intelligence. By regularly reflecting on your emotions and seeking feedback from others, you can continually improve your self awareness and emotional regulation. This practice not only enhances your personal growth, but also positively impacts your professional relationships and the effectiveness that they have. Here's another quick self assessment. No need to drop this into the chat, but feel free to read this on the screen and just rate yourself. This is for you to understand where you stand currently. Hopefully everybody was able to rate themselves. Again, this is just for you to understand where you're at right now and to see if there's areas for you to improve. So now that we've went through our all the knowledge behind this, we're going to learn some tools that can help us improve our self-awareness. And just remember, self-awareness is a continuous process. And and one of the things that we dived on today is the daily journaling. And this is so critical in that foundation of understanding yourself. Write down your thoughts, your emotions, and reactions each day. One of the things you could do if you're not a big writer, because I know once I write a half a page, my hand starts to hurt. You can type. You can send yourself an email, a journal email. You can also take your phone and press record on the voice recorder and record yourself. That's what I like to do. I do that quite a bit. And what I do is I record myself because I like to hear what I have to say back. And it's always great to hear yourself a year from now or a couple months from now and listen back to something you were struggling with at the time, and then think through how you were able to accomplish that struggle that you had or that challenge you had and how you were able to overcome it. Mindfulness meditation, practicing mindfulness to stay present and aware of your emotional state. Seeking 360 feedback is another great way of 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 understanding yourself. 360 is so good because you just sit there and listen. So ask a trusted colleague or a friend. Personal assessments. These are great tools to use. Your EQ, your Myers-Briggs, your four lenses, all these personality tests, you get to gain insight into your own personality and sort of frame how you interpret things. Reflective listening. Practice active listening in conversations to understand others' perspectives. So, in other words, if you ever heard, do you listen to talk or do you listen to respond or are you just listening to actually understand? So you have to remember that I always remind myself to listen to understand, not listen to talk. So observation and reflection, spend time observing your behaviors and reflecting on your actions and decisions. Stress management techniques, engaging in stress management activities like exercising, deep breathing exercises, or hobbies to help keep your emotional state balanced. This is my one of my great things I like to do is stress management techniques because if you're able to manage your stress, then you won't have that hijack take over your brain, that fight or flight. You're able to respond thoughtfully. So I like to go out and exercise. I like to woodwork because that's something that I can help manage that stress. And then when I come into work, I'm ready for the day, and I'm also ready to respond thoughtfully. Just remember daily check-in. Self-awareness is like a muscle. The more we use it, the stronger it gets. So just remember when you're doing your self-awareness, what am I feeling? What caused this? How did I respond? How could I improve next time? So how can I improve next time? That's always something that you can write down. Or was my response correct? And do I need to improve next time? So these are just some of the things that you can think about when you're thinking about journaling and when you're writing down or you're talking to yourself. These are some aspects that you do and check in daily. So the strategies for self-awareness, these are some good strategies. And I read this book about 10 years ago. It's Travis Bradbury, and it's his book on emotional intelligence 2.0. He outlines several strategies that can help us become more aware of our emotions and how our emotions influences our behavior and how they influence others. And the biggest thing up here, and I'll mention this the first thing, and it's really critical when you're talking about self-awareness, is quit labeling emotions as good or bad. I'm going to say that again. Quit labeling emotions as good or bad. Accept your emotions as they come without judgment. Labeling them as good or bad can lead to suppression or exaggeration of certain emotions. Instead, observe them neutrally and understand that all your emotions serve a purpose. This is one of the things that it took me a while to get through is understanding that all of my emotions are what I need. They're not good or bad. I need them all. And there's a time and place for each emotion. And this is one of the biggest things that I reckon if you didn't remember anything else from this self-awareness is just quit labeling your emotions good or bad because that will help you in your journaling and that will help you in your process of understanding yourself. One of the other things is feeling the emotions physically. For instance, anxiety may cause your heart to race, your palms to sweat, your brain to not focus correctly. So as soon as you start recognizing those signs, you can take actions to address that emotion sooner. Like I said earlier, before the briefing or before this presentation, I felt my heart race. I felt my palms sweat. So the appropriate action I did was took a break, took a pause, took a deep breath. And that's something that you can always do is take a deep breath and breathe for a little bit. If you close your eyes, that helps you focus some more because when you take away a sense, your other senses kick in and it can help you focus a little bit better. Or if you're in a meeting and you feel yourself getting anxious, you can always pick one point to stare at in the room and you can take some breathing deep in and deep out, and that would help with your emotional state. But the quicker we recognize the physical signs, the quicker we can respond correctly. The other one that's here that's really good to recognize is observe the ripple effect. Notice how your emotions and actions impact others around you. Being aware of this ripple effect can help you manage your behavior to foster better relationships and create a positive environment. Have you ever been in a meeting where you watch somebody say something to somebody else and that person didn't like what that was said to them, and you can see the ripple go through them. The way I explained it to somebody the other day is it's like when you drop a rock in a pond and you can see those waves ripple. And that's what you can see sometimes when people say those instinctive things, those knee-jerk reactions to others. You can watch the ripple take effect into that person they're talking to. So just remember, like your emotions have effects on others. Know your triggers. Identify and understand situations that trigger strong emotional response. Knowing your triggers allows you to prepare and manage your reactions, especially when you're encounter situations where where you are being uh, being upset or you're being anxious. Like, know your triggers, know what's triggering you. Regular assess and understand your emotional response to those triggers. Being proactive and help develop strategies to handle those triggers more effectively in the future. Getting to know yourself under stress, recognizing your reaction under stress and learn how to manage those reactions. Reflect on a so if we to do this normally we can reflect on a past stressful situation and examine how you handle that. Normally I reflect upon stress when I'm driving in the car. It's a perfect time to reflect, and I reflect on past situations. And you may see me talking to myself and saying, "Oh, I wish I could have, I wish I would have did this, I wish I would have did that. Next time this happens, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to make sure that I handle this effectively." One of the other great things in here too as well is self-talk. Use positive self-talk to manage your emotions and responses. So when you use positive self-talk, it's encouraging, it's affirmation. It helps shift your mindset, and it helps shift your perspective. One of the things that I do again, and people probably think I'm listening to music in my car when I'm talking, but I'm not. Normally, this self-talk is what I'm doing in my car. Is I'm talking to myself, Jerry, you got this. Jerry, you've already handled challenges like this before in the past, and you were successful in accomplishing in overcoming those challenges. Today, just before this presentation, I said, Jerry, you got this. You you've practiced. You understand. You wrote the material. You're good. You understand this. Jerry, you have this. So that self-talk is something that is critical to reframe our mind, and to also to tell us that, we're good. We're great. And it helps give you a positive outlook on life. So by incorporating these practices into your daily routine, you can enhance your self-awareness and become more effective both personally and professionally. Which of these strategies will you try to incorporate first? How do you think it will benefit you? So let's end with one final thought. What is one small change you can make this week to improve your self-awareness? It could be a pause before a response. It could be asking for feedback. If you want to, please share that into the chat. And before we wrap up, let's recap what we covered today. We explored the concepts of self-awareness within the broader framework of emotional intelligence. We discussed how our emotions influence our behaviors and decisions, and we learned some practical tools to increase our personal self-awareness. Remember, self-awareness is a journey, not a destination. Continual reflection and the willingness to seek feedback are key to improving self-awareness. I encourage you to apply what you learned today in both your personal and professional lives. Start with small steps like daily journaling, practicing mindfulness, and being open to feedback. And I see people are chiming in on the chat, and I taking deep breathing exercises before reacting. That's perfect. And asking for feedback. Yes, this is a great way to improve. For everybody, I just want you to remember, if you ever feel overwhelmed, remember the strategies we discussed and don't hesitate to use them. Thank you all for your active participation and insightful comments. I hope you found this session valuable and that it brings positive change into your life. Have a great day and continue your journey on self-discovery and improvement.
Thank you so much, Mr. Britt, for that fantastic presentation. I know that I got a lot out of that. And I would I appreciate all the involvement as well. And I just have to call out that comment at the end where someone said that remembering that I am a work in progress and every day is an opportunity to do better. That is a fantastic way to capture what we talked about today. So thank you, Jerry, for giving us this fantastic information. And to everyone who's here today, I did put a link in the chat, and we would so love to hear what you have to, what you think about today's event, how we can improve. We would just love to have that feedback. And I will be sending a follow-up email after this with the slides as well as the handout. But that is all we have for you today. Thank you so much for being here. Oh, we do have time for questions. I apologize. I did get a little ahead of things, but if there are any questions, I'll leave it to Mr. Britt to answer those. All right, well, I am not seeing any questions roll in, but I'm sure if you have those, he would be happy to take those if you want to contact him directly. But other than that, that concludes our event. So thank you all so much for being here.